An original podcast from podlatino.com.
Sagittarius has this particular way of walking into a room with a new idea, a travel story, or a question nobody had thought to ask before. It's not just social energy or surface-level enthusiasm. It's something closer to a genuine need. The need to feel that life still has something left to discover, that there's more beyond the familiar horizon, that moving, learning, and expanding isn't a luxury, but something close to a vital condition. The ninth sign of the zodiac isn't just chasing adventure for the fun of it. It's looking for meaning, and that difference changes everything. Sagittarius is a fire sign, like Aries and Leo, but its fire has a different quality. It's not the impulsive fire that leaps before thinking, nor the fire that needs to shine in order to exist. It's the kind of fire that lights the path forward, that keeps the road visible when everything else feels uncertain. Add to that its mutable modality, which it shares with Gemini, Virgo, and Pisces. Mutability gives it flexibility, adaptability, and a genuine openness to change. Sagittarius isn't rigid. It can adjust, redirect, reinvent itself. But that same flexibility, when it isn't well managed, can turn into inconsistency, change for the sake of change, and a real difficulty staying committed to what's already been chosen. Its ruling planet is Jupiter, the largest in the solar system, and that detail matters. Jupiter symbolizes growth, expansion, confidence, abundance, and vision. It shapes how Sagittarius shows up in the world, with a fairly deep-seated sense that things can work out, that there's always a way through, that the world is bigger than it looks from where you're standing. That Jupiterian confidence can be a tremendous gift. When Sagittarius is at its best, it radiates genuine optimism, opens doors, spreads enthusiasm, and helps others see possibilities they wouldn't have noticed on their own. The problem comes when that confidence tips into excess, promises that don't hold up, plans launched without thinking through the landing, a faith in the future so strong that the present gets left behind. In everyday life, Sagittarius tends to move through the world with a curiosity that doesn't draw many borders between subjects. It wants to learn, ask questions, explore ideas, and connect with different perspectives. It can go from a philosophical conversation to a spontaneous midweek travel plan without finding that the least bit contradictory. It has a natural ease with big-picture thinking, with seeing the broader landscape, with finding the meaning behind a situation while others are still processing the details. But that same pull toward the horizon can make it hard to stay close to what's right in front of them. Small details, repetitive tasks, routines with no visible purpose. Anything that doesn't feel connected to a sense of forward movement tends to lose their attention pretty quickly. At work, Sagittarius comes alive when it feels like what it's doing has a reason behind it. It doesn't need to be spectacular or prestigious. It needs to feel meaningful, with room to grow, in an environment that isn't suffocating it with unnecessary rules or structures that don't seem to serve any real purpose. Sagittarius can be an enthusiastic learner, a natural communicator, someone with a genuine ability to teach, inspire, or open conversations that others tend to avoid. It can also be very good at exploring new territory, launching projects, and thinking broadly. The challenge shows up once a project is already running, and what it needs is consistency, detailed planning, or the patience to see things through. That's where Sagittarius has to make a more deliberate effort. Not because it lacks the ability, but because novelty feeds it in ways that routine simply doesn't. Discipline in Sagittarius is possible, but it needs the right conditions. When there's a clear purpose, room to move, and something that generates real enthusiasm, Sagittarius can be deeply committed. When those conditions are missing, it can procrastinate, change course, or walk away before the work is done. This isn't laziness in the traditional sense. It's more like a disconnection between the action and the meaning behind it. Sagittarius can learn to be consistent, to plan ahead, to finish what it starts. But that learning also requires understanding that meaning isn't always there at the beginning, that sometimes it has to be built along the way, and that consistency itself can create purpose if it's given enough time. In relationships, Sagittarius can love with a genuinely generous spirit, with joy, with a real desire to share experiences and grow alongside someone. It's drawn to people who have a rich inner world, who have ideas, who want to explore. It doesn't have much interest in emotional monotony or relationships where it has to shrink itself to fit in. It needs space, autonomy, and a dynamic that feels expansive rather than confining. When it finds that, Sagittarius can be a loyal, fun, honest, and deeply present partner. When it doesn't, it can become elusive, distant, or start looking elsewhere without quite saying so. The cliché about Sagittarius not being able to commit has some truth to it, but it also oversimplifies things considerably. The real challenge isn't that it doesn't want commitment, it's that it needs to feel like commitment won't diminish it. When Sagittarius learns that freedom can exist inside a caring relationship, that choosing someone doesn't mean losing yourself, that emotional depth is also a form of expansion, then it becomes capable of building solid, meaningful connections without giving up what makes it who it is. In friendship, Sagittarius tends to be the one who suggests the unexpected plan, says what everyone was thinking but nobody dared to say out loud, has a story for every situation, and knows how to lift the mood when things get heavy. It connects through shared experiences, through conversations that run longer than expected, through projects born out of a single enthusiastic night. It's generous with its time and energy when something genuinely matters to it. But it can also be inconsistent, showing up with real intensity and then disappearing without much explanation when something new catches its attention. Communication is one of its most interesting territories, and also one of its biggest sources of tension. Sagittarius tends to speak with directness, to say what it thinks without much cushioning, to express its perspective with conviction. That honesty can be refreshing, even courageous, but it can also land harder than intended, saying a truth that stings more because of how it was delivered than because of what it actually meant, reducing complex emotions to something that sounds like it has an obvious fix, or offering a philosophical take when what the other person needed was simply to feel heard. Sagittarius needs to learn that honesty without sensitivity isn't always a virtue, that words carry weight, and good intentions don't always undo the impact of what was said. When Sagittarius is in balance, it can be one of the most inspiring energies in the entire zodiac. Honest, generous, wise, curious, with a real capacity to open new paths and help others see further than they could on their own. Under pressure, though, it can become impatient, excessive, dogmatic, or avoidant. It might deflect difficult conversations with humor or distance, commit to things it doesn't follow through on, or convince itself that a situation isn't as serious as it is just to avoid sitting with what's uncomfortable. Recognizing those patterns isn't a verdict. It's simply the work that needs to be done. Sagittarius teaches something that everyone needs at some point, that life can be bigger than we imagine, that searching for meaning is legitimate, and that trust isn't naivety when it's paired with awareness. But its most real growth happens when it understands that the most authentic freedom doesn't come from moving without limits. It comes from choosing with clarity and standing behind that choice with responsibility. That truth, to actually be true, also needs sensitivity. And that expanding doesn't always mean changing where you are. Sometimes it means staying, going deeper, and discovering that what you already have can still be new territory, if you're willing to look at it with open eyes.